Hello, it's me, Peppermint, and I decided to do an impromptu live because, it's Saturday night and I'm sitting at home with nothing to do. And I wanted to have a conversation with a friend of mine who we hadn't seen each other for a long time, but he actually starred in the first installment that has been released, and the second installment that has not been released. But he stars in the first installment of my self-produced film, A Girl Like Me, which is basically all the music videos that accompany my album that we filmed back in 2020. It's been years. And we're finally reunited and decided to get together and talk in public about some of my favorite things. I've texted him a few times fretting about the world. I've texted him a couple times, gloating and super excited and couldn't shut up about the movie Sinners. And so we're going to talk about all things vampires and guns and preparing and running and defending. He's my favorite bad boy. His name is Levi, and I'm going to welcome him to the show. Hi, Levi.
Can you hear me? I'm so bad at this. I'm technologically the worst person to ever exist. So
We hear you.
yes,
We hear you. Welcome to the stream.
Hi. It's good to see you.
It's great to see you, my darling.
Yeah.
You look fantastic.
Which is shocking, but here I am.
No, never. Yeah, you look pretty good. There's going to be people, if you're in the comments.
I got them auto scrolling, so
yeah, we're streaming from a different location, from an undisclosed location. So if you're in the comments, we may or may not see them, but I'm going to try my best to see them. I'm actually going to move it over here so I can actually look at it. So you're coming to, it's daytime for you right now, almost dusk.
West Coast.
On the West Coast, and I'm on the East Coast, and it's fully nighttime here. Hello, gorgeous Peppermint. Oh yes, I opened up the comments, and there's some nice stuff. Mostly Twitch, and Twitch is like my heart, and I got to tell you that I'm telling everybody that Twitch is my heart, and I need to be doing a live stream, a video game live stream pretty soon. Oh my God, Levi, do you play video games?
I knew you were going to ask me this question because I'm such a noob to Twitch, but no, the last video game console I owned was 16-bit Sega Genesis in 1997.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you.
I can't hear you all of a sudden.
Oh, no. Is your...
Wait, can y'all hear Levi?
Can you guys hear me? Blink twice.
Okay, okay, I can hear you.
Okay.
It wasn't you. It was me.
Weird. So yeah, no, I haven't played a video game since I owned a Sega Genesis in 1995.
That was the 90s. That was straight up the 90s.
Yeah, I have an addictive personality, so I try to stay away from those things, or I feel like they'd just completely take over.
That's fair. I'm going to switch my microphone again. There we go. Ow. Well, I have it. If you ever do decide that you want to get to take a stab at some video games, I'd be happy to do Fortnite, which is the entry level moment.
I've heard my wife is very obsessed with The Sims, so we're currently in talks of getting that back going.
Do you have a console in the house?
No, but I have a gaming PC, which I used to edit content on. So,
nice. Hey, it works for everything. I love it. Well, maybe one day I'll invite you to my team. One of my favorites to do is Dead by Daylight. And
a lot of guys at my
do they play it?
Yeah, a lot of guys at my work play that. They're very obsessed.
It's wild. it's wild. So maybe one day you'll like do a Dead by Daylight moment. And there's
Somebody
a
said,
bunch of
"Oh." Somebody in the comments said, "Oh, herd wife, I will be respectful." You getting respect over here. I guess I should kind of should I elaborate on how we met, or do you want me to keep that?
Yeah, you can feel free. Yeah, I'm not gonna
Okay.
put you in a cage.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a very open person, so I kind of talk about my life at ends about all of it. I met Peppermint when I was working in the adult film industry as a performer, and we had a mutual friend, and that's how we kind of came to pass. And then I was involved in her epic music saga, the first portion, and then suffered a pretty traumatic injury and wasn't able to make the second part. But here we are now, and we are reconnected. But yes, my wife and I both at one point in time were in the adult industry, so I am used to being catcalled on the internet. That's all right.
Mm. And now
And
you're
so here we are.
and here we are. And now it's so wild because we got reconnected and not that we were ever like disconnected, but we reunited after, like a whole pandemic happened, y'all. So life be lifing. And we sort of like reconnected over we were commiserating over everything that's happening these days, because it's wild. And I wasn't quite sure. Y'all look at Levi and you might think, um you might think that he
Say it.
enjoys you might think he's a motherfucking MAGA person, like just like,
Yeah, I
maybe.
do. I mean, I have a very specific appearance to me. So
Yeah.
I kind of blend in to, I mean, that's my privilege, obviously, is I can travel in a lot of circles. But that being said, I work in my civilian job, work in a very conservative industry and am very openly progressive. And I mean, I'm so far left that most people on the American left hate me. So they think I'm too extreme.
That's my
I
kind of left.
yeah, I went so far left we got our guns back. So that's where we're at, and that's kind of part of the stuff we're here to talk about.
Yeah. I mean, he's so far left, y'all, to his job where there's lots of conservative folks. He wore his Black Trans Lives Matter shirt. Not even just Black Lives Matter, Black Trans
Black
Lives.
trans
That
lives, yeah.
is, that's pretty radical. What the fuck is up with my microphone? Whatever. So yeah, I'm speaking of Black Trans Lives, like I'm uh, I've always been like, I guess I was like always like this kind of liberal, unbeknownst to me. I was like this liberal kind of whatever. And now that there's so much happening in the world, like politically, it really, I'm kind of, I'm kind of gagging and realizing that like our lives are changing. My life might really change in a way that like I'm not ready for. So I want to get ready for it. And I said to myself, I think I want to go and shoot a gun. That's not what I said. When I came to visit, when I came to visit Levi and his gorgeous wife, I noticed that he had some guns, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is fucking scary, kind of hot, but also equally as scary." Because I've never been alone in a room with a white man who had a gun. I that's like
I
what
mean,
I've never.
that's like kind of it's nightmare fuel for sure.
It is. I was like, "Oh shit." My body was telling me run. But then I realized it's important for us to like, be prepared,
And
to
I mean,
defend ourselves.
trans people specifically, black trans women, at the top of the of what is needed here, because I mean, you guys are on the forefront of where these Hitler-esque Germany style attacks, I mean, are starting. And if you go back through history, I mean, you look at where the Third Reich started, they burned the one of the first gender affirming surgery locations, like, for the time. I mean, that was the first
Yeah.
one of the first places they took to the ground. So I mean, it's scary to see where we're at, I think, especially because you know, I don't, if I closed my eyes and went about my daily life, not much would change right now. But
Mhm.
because, I'm connected to people like you, and I have kind of inserted myself into spaces that I should be aware of, to see what's going on from another point of view, it's fucking terrifying. And like, I think that the scariest part is that there's so many people in my life on the other side that, in the industries I work in or in the town that I'm at, they don't see anything changing. To them, it's kind of like closed eyes, and the world feels the same. It's a lukewarm bathtub, and the water's just getting slowly, I mean, we're boiling to death in
Hot.
lukewarm water. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, you brought up that clinic. It was Magnus Hirschfeld's Institute for Sexual Research, and one of the very first places where they were burning all the books, banning the books, burning the books, wanting to get rid of all the information, just like they started to do, like, l- you
they're
know,
doing it now.
they're doing it now, but they started before, obviously before this moment. And you can just connect the dots. Like if you zoom out and we take a look at like history, not only the Holocaust and the Nazis, but even other fascist regimes that have
Yeah.
happened in sort of modern times. The playbook is the same,
Over and
like
over again.
in terms of who they demonize, getting an enemy. And I was just talking today, because I was lucky enough to do a play that I hope would have come to Broadway, but it was a play about it's Transparent the musical, and which is based on the Amazon TV series. And in the play, just like they do in the TV show, but more so in the play, they sort of flash back to 1930s Berlin at this fall of the Weimar Republic, which was like this really sexually free, very liberal, very progressive moment in time in Germany, where everything was okay. And although there was a lot of like political tension and economic despair because coming off of the depression, you know, we were in a world where in Berlin where trans people like there was like a special trans ID that you could carry that like it was like fabulous. I can't say life was fabulous, but
Yeah,
like
but I mean, it
there
was
was
more,
recognition.
yeah, there was recognition there.
And then as suddenly, not suddenly, but once Hitler came into power and started to get into power, they started clamping down slowly but surely, like you said, on the trans folks, on the queer folks, on the gay folks, and just everybody. And those books were the very first that were burned. And so it just feels like history is like repeating itself. But we weren't alive during that time. So, like, I guess it's not repeating for us. And they didn't
We've
give
definitely
us.
got some things to our advantage, I think,
Mhm,
now going into it. There's some disadvantages and some advantages. One of the disadvantages,
that's
like I
right.
said, is so many people are privileged enough to be unaware, especially people that could make
Yeah.
a difference. But the positive, and again, we're going to link back to it, is everybody is armed. I mean, one of the things in
Mhm.
America that would be hard to enact is conservatives aren't going to be able to enact gun laws that are going to limit gun ownership, because at the end of the day, like, those 2A NRA gun loving associations, that's what they fight for. So, I
Right.
mean, I will say that since you and I have seen each other, I've bought two more weapons. Like, I, I, you know, I, I don't want us to run into a situation where there isn't an opportunity to prepare. I mean, we've got
It's
stocked
gonna be
canned
too late.
food. We've
Mhm.
stocked up some canned food. We've made like emergency plans. I've got a small community of friends here that we have a plan that if something were to go happen, that we would need to meet up. There are things in place we can do to protect each other as a community. I think fellowshipping with other people in, you know, vulnerable communities is super important right now. You and I have talked. I've gone a couple of times down to there's mutual aid in my city every Tuesday, and I, donate clothes, donate food, whatever I can. Um, those are necessities right now because I mean, people are losing things left and right.
I want to look at the. There's a couple of comments. First of all, Rockstar. No, I've never been alone in a room with anybody that had a gun. Actually, that's not true. Now that I think, I was alone in a room with a man who had a gun. Um, and I'm not talking about like law enforcement. Like I'm sure I've like been at the airport, like been past the, but like alone in a room that like nobody else knew we were in that room once, and it scared the hell out of me. It was a hookup, and I didn't know that he was bringing a gun to my hotel room, and I was like, "You have to go." So that ended very quick, and I was like afraid to tell him that because I was like, if I try to kick him out, he could just like shoot me.
Yeah, just
Um, yeah, like, "Oh, bitch." Yeah, and I was like, "Oh my god, what is this gonna turn into?" Anyway, so that was a situation. I did, and at the same
we're
time,
we're an open carry state here, so like
mm,
it's pretty commonplace. Like I'll go to the grocery store and there's a couple of guys that openly
with
have
guns walking around.
pistols on their hips.
Uh, but that was the last time, Rockstar. And uh, let's see what Rockstar said. Have you wait, somebody said something else, an audition to be in the sequel. Pep, would you audition to be in the sequel? Wait, what are y'all talking about, sequel?
I think
Okay,
that
I
was a
don't know.
while back.
Okay. Oh, would he audition? Would you audition to be in the sequel of this? Yeah, he doesn't have to audition. Yeah,
I was supposed to be in the
he was
sequel.
supposed to be in the sequel. But I'll talk about that later. And the other thing I was going to say was, oh, thank you, Rockstar Cabaret, 100%. Yeah, if you haven't seen this new production of Cabaret, you must see it. Levi, I'm going to get y'all up here to come and see a couple of Broadway shows.
I would
Was
love it.
Cabaret what we had talked about, or were we
I'm gonna
talking about something
be
else?
yeah. Well, we've talked about Alan Cummings, but not
Oh,
Cabaret
not Cabaret. Yeah, yeah.
specifically. Um, you're gonna hate me right now. The only Broadway show I've ever seen in my entire life is The Book of Mormon,
Ah,
which
I
it's kind
mean,
of
it was a
kind of.
hit.
I mean, it for what it is, it's great, but it's like tragically uninspired art. Like I feel like you miss the point of Broadway when you do something like that.
Yeah, well,
I
that's not your fault because that's what Broadway has been producing overwhelmingly for many years. And so,
yeah,
you know, that's what it is. But they're starting to come back around. I think, obviously Cabaret is classic and it's,
classics.
revival. But there are some other new things, and we're hoping that, more new things come to Broadway that reflect what's happening in the time. And that's one of the things that's really interesting. I wanted to get your opinion on about art reflecting what's going on. But before we do that, I want to acknowledge that what Danielle Cole says about the Klan and Jim Crow and apartheid are good examples of genocides and fascism that happened at home. 100%. And one of the things that I think was a disservice, not only to the people of this country in general, but like also Black folks, is that like chattel slavery and the American transatlantic slave trade, and pretty much the existence of enslaved Black folks on this continent, and then discriminated against, the oppression that we faced since then through Jim Crow. Um, It was a genocide, and we don't refer to it as that, I think, on purpose. I think that the powers that be are like, "Okay, we have to acknowledge that they were slaves, but why don't we just say that they were out in the field picking cotton and Abraham Lincoln freed them?" And that now they're happy. And I think
Whitewashing
that's kind
history.
of, yeah, whitewash that history, honey. But
Well, I mean, it's
it was
still a
a
genocide.
genocide. It's a
We're still
genocide.
we're still in the genocide because I
We're
mean,
still in
let's
it.
look at the prison industrial complex. I mean, it's designed. It is specifically designed to systemically oppress Black people specifically.
Honey, okay, I want to
I feel like we're gonna fall down 1,000 rabbit holes here.
We're about to go in.
Yeah.
We're about to go in. You're right. So I won't, because I'm yappy, so I won't make it too saw the first week. Okay, so what we're about to talk about. Saw the first week. Love. Okay. Oh, you saw Rockstar is like a Broadway person. Um
Love Orville Peck too, by the way.
yeah, love Orville Peck. So I'm gonna try to get you to come soon and come see Orville. We'll go backstage and meet them and everything.
Don't
Um
don't play with my heart, please.
You come in here next week. When we'll talk. We'll talk. We'll talk.
Okay, okay.
Um, but uh, that brings us to two perfect segues. Number one, um, let's talk about. Okay, so here we go. I didn't think about what happened to the black experience in America involving a genocide because history has been so whitewashed, I think for sure. As it has, it gets like that with I mean, history gets whitewashed, but it gets glossed over and they say the victor is the person who gets to write the story.
Yeah,
Whoever like, and so like it's no surprise.
history
Uh
is written by the winners,
that's
so
what
they
it
say.
exactly. It's yeah. Or the people these days is the people who have the most money,
Yeah,
regardless whether they're winners or losers.
because that's what we've turned winning into. People with
Yeah,
money, or that's what our society has viewed as the winner.
yeah. And the wars that we've had and the struggles that we have had, for the most part, they've transformed from like armed, revolts to, we're going to kill you, but like it's going to be the food that is killing you because it's poison and it's chemicals. So, or like
I,
through the industrial complex, the prison
it's
industrial
it's not
complex.
it's not funny, but it's mildly. It's interesting to see how the battles used to be. Like you said, they were weaponized. It was combat, things like that, and now the battles have been reduced to those with power are poisoning us through our food, through the prison industrial complex, things like that. And our weapons to retaliate are limited to slander, slamming people on the internet or dragging people through social media. And like, you can't really, there's very little action, much else. So it's kind of like the disparity between the rich and the poor is like, we're out here shooting peas at monsters and they're, killing us
With
easily.
what we ingest.
Yeah.
So one of the things, okay, so the two books, and I have this one here. Oh, I'm gonna see if I can get this one here. Um, okay. Two books come to mind in this moment during the conversation. The first one, and Stro Baby, thank you for sharing that about your grandmother. I'm not sure if your grandmother's still with us, but I'm sure that there's some really, um, I'd be interested to hear, like, from what your grandmother and anybody else who's a Holocaust survivor has to say about the moment that we're in right now, which is very interesting. But here's the book right now. This is just the cover of it because I lent it to a friend, but I did read it. It's called Caste: The Origin of Our Discontent. And I
Oh yeah.
love this book so much, y'all. I know it's backwards. I don't know if I'll be able I can't flip the screen right now. I can't flip the script. Maybe I can mirror the screen. But
I'm plugging my phone in.
okay, plug it before it dies. Um, so read this book if you can, everybody. And then there's another book that's for the times, and it's a very easy read. But a friend of mine is a lawyer, an attorney who was a clerk, a Supreme Court clerk, and now is a law professor at Michigan, University of Michigan, and is also obviously a lawyer. Her name is Leah Littman, and her book is called Lawless: How the Supreme Court Runs on Conservative Grievance, Fringe Theories, and Bad Vibes. And it's a very easy read. It's not written in legalese, so you don't have to be a lawyer to understand it. It's written by a lawyer using pop culture references because that's how we communicate these days. And it's exactly what the title says. Um, and I had a conversation with I'm having a conversation with Leah on the 13th. We're going to be live streaming,
Ooh.
but one of the things I want to ask her that she addresses in the book, and you know, kind of one of the things I came to the conclusion after watching a YouTube video is good old YouTube, um, that we still have all the ingredients. Like you have the guns, we have the gumption. We're like we get inspired, even though our country and our government has lulled us into this vibe of being a consumer.
Yeah, it's
Um,
just total. It's in action. It's like a fear of action because there's so much to lose, I think, for most people at this point.
yeah,
You look at
we
Spain or Italy and they take to the streets immediately because that's what they do. And then, even me, I'm as terribly guilty. I'll be like, oh, there's a protest on Wednesday, I can't go because I got to pay bills. We're
Honestly, and
trapped in
that's
that.
that's the trap. That's the snare that we're in. And our biggest export in our country is culture,
Yeah,
commercial culture. And we are the number one job of Americans is to consume, not even produce. So the but I still think that we have that spark that would inspire us to want to get up and fight.
absolutely.
And we're seeing these moments that are inspiring us to do so. But at the point at which we would have had an armed revolt, where we would have had well, maybe the Tea Party is not a good example, but maybe where we would have had something going on, we instead watch a movie or play a video game. That like when we're
Yeah,
feeling like, oh, I need to, we consume
escapism.
escapism and we consume and we watch a movie about a revolt. Instead of going to do a revolt, we watch a movie about a revolt. We
Yeah.
watch a story about these things, and that kind of satisfies that thing in our mind that would have gotten us to get up and do those things.
Well, and I
um
think that that's a double-edged sword too. I think we need the people that are out there doing it. I mean, like Ryan Coogler, or, bands like Rage Against the Machine, or there's a new group of indigenous kids out there that called Neighborhood Kids, and they're kind of picking up the torch where Rage Against the Machine left off. And I think that type of consumption, when targeted right, can be a good spark, but I think we need more of that. I think that the people that have the platforms to be create that have platforms as creators already, if they're really with the cause, they need to go out there and create content for consumption to get other people out in the streets.
Enter, and it's not exactly what you just described, but enter Ryan Coogler.
Yeah.
Sinners. Oh
So
my motherfucking
I'm
god.
so excited to talk about
Sinners.
this because there's so many layers to that movie, and
Let's
it's
go.
so intellectually woven together, I think. um
Now
as a
wait,
white. Okay.
wait. For those of you who have not yet seen the movie, first of all, how dare you? Get out
There's
of my
going to be
life, second of all.
spoilers.
There's going to be spoilers. So get ready. If you're not ready for spoilers, this is your opportunity to keep the stream on and go do something else. And come back to this later on. And I will be posting some clips and some stuff like that. But you've been warned. Now, show of hands in the chat, in the comments, who has seen Sinners. I expect every single one of y'all to have, but
we
show of
got we got one of
show of
them.
hands. Okay, so let's see who else. In the meantime, okay, you were gonna say, as a white man, hit me.
Okay, so I have to imagine that our experiences in this movie were very different. um I also imagine that you and I probably thought a lot of the same things because we have such good banter around these types of subjects.
Mhm.
I think a lot of my white friends, they really kind of identified with this movie, which kind of makes me laugh because I think that that's the point with the
Mhm.
vampires being Irish and kind of going through and there's such a subtle, like, there's such a subtle commentary on white people in this that I just absolutely love, because it's like, oh, this whole culture of white people that went through a very similar experience to how they feel that Black American experience was. And then, they're talking about how they're so similar, and they know hardship too, and they can get through it together, but their ultimate goal is to still exploit Black culture in the end. And so it's like, yeah, okay, so they identify on the same level that they've had this struggle to get to where they are in America, and they're still out there trying to exploit Black music, Black culture, the labor of them going out and helping them do whatever, like. And I think it just continues talking with people at my work, they were like, oh yeah, I love that movie because the vampires, they were downtrodden too. They had such bad experiences, and they found community. And I'm like, you really missed what that whole point was about there.
Well, it was there for. I mean, listen. if the movie hadn't had that component to it and had been more overtly like black struggle, then then those people would have hated the film. And so I think I'm glad that there was something to like something for everyone in this film, and maybe they left with more than what they expected. I hope. I think that's certain. I mean, I left with more than
Yeah,
what I expected because I didn't know
same.
exactly what the story was going to be. Even though I'd made up my mind really early, I was going to go and see it. But what I loved so much about it was it was a commentary on everything you just mentioned. It was also very historically accurate, maybe save for that the vampire component. But it was really historically accurate in terms of who was there at the time. This is, it's a period piece, and 1933. Literally 1933, same year something's going down in
Yeah.
Berlin. It's happening here, and so who was there like hearing the stories about the Chinese American folks or Chinese immigrants who came and how they were being treated very much mirrors what's happening right now with the Chinese Exclusion Act, where they were like, no more Chinese people can come to this country. We don't want you. And then the people who were here, the Chinese folks were brought to America to build the railroads out west. But then after that, they were, the next job that they normally would have done would have been to go to the fields and pick cotton.
Yeah.
Uh, but the slave masters slash president, whatever, found a way to keep black folks doing it by way of the slave patrols, the chain gangs, going out and arresting, making these laws, that these Jim Crow laws that were like, oh, suddenly it's illegal for a black person to look left when the sun is rising at 4 to whatever. And then you're arrested, and then you're back in the fields picking the cotton, doing the
And
labor.
they
But this
and they
time,
even touched on it in the movie. They were sharecroppers, and
yep,
I mean that was
exactly.
just a way to extend slave
The
ownership.
system, and when, not to okay, spoiler, uh, Delroy Lindo, I think, is a marvel, and I loved his performance in the film, as Delta Slim, and he had a really touching monologue, that talked about his experience. I'll try to soft spoiler here. Talked about his experience, with after as a musician earning money, and what happened as a result of them going out and celebrating the fact that they had this money that they earned, that they work for, and how this is his connection to how he knew some of the people who were on the chain gang because something went wrong.
Yeah,
Um, and black wealth was not something that anybody was able to achieve. Like, the the Chinese folks, the Chinese immigrants who were there, provided a very crucial service. They provided the stores. They opened up stores in the Mississippi Delta, and they had stores for white folks and stores for black folks because they couldn't shop in the same store because of Jim Crow and segregation. And so they were able to provide services to people, the black folks who didn't really have any, economic comeuppance. They provided credit to the black shoppers, which is something that wasn't really available to them any other situation.
yeah,
And that was great. But another piece to this, which is really interesting, is that apparently, according to some other historians, is that this was the perfect wedge to drive in to the community to stop black folks from wanting to create their own stores.
yeah.
Just put a store there anyway, and then they're not going to be able to do a store. They won't, and
They
then they won't
yeah,
have the way to build any wealth.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's such a. I mean, that's like an American pastime. If you just look at Black Wall Street, I mean, that's the.
There you have it. Oh,
I mean, the wealthiest
Levi.
black people in America wiped out by white people just for the sake of trying to. I mean, if you imagine how those people would their families would exist like today, how
If
far
they had
out
had,
how far out that community would have spread, and their ancestors down to now, had Black Wall Street just been a successful community with nothing standing in its way, it would have changed the landscape in America completely. And unfortunately, I think white America would never stand for that. And so, trying to find ways to up black owned businesses, things like that. That's why we're seeing these anti DEI, anti
talk
it's all a
about
tie-in.
it.
It's a tie-in. I mean, it's the same thing. Seeing black wealth in America is the biggest threat to white wealth in America, and I think that the government knows that they want to take it back to the 1930s, 1940s, 1950s, and the only way to do it is to claim that DEI is some kind of
Harm.
woke, harmful, whatever it is, whatever conservative terms pollute the internet. But it's, if anything, it's made us, we go out more and solely try and seek out anyone that is, going through a time that's any kind of targeted subgroup of people. And like, hey, do you have a business? Hey, do you do this? Like, we advertise. One of my wife's jobs, they offer services to trans women at a third of the cost that they offer them to anybody else.
I
laser
might come
hair
out and take her up on that.
Laser hair removal, all that stuff.
Shooting guns and getting waxed, getting lasered,
it's a
whatever.
it's the American dream,
You know. Yeah, that's the new American dream.
but
Um,
there's so many
yeah.
layers of sinners. I mean, where I could talk about this movie for eternity. Just on one of my previously favorite movies, not for the same reason, but because I like campy horror films, was Quentin Tarantino's From Dusk Till Dawn. I
Yeah.
grew up on that
Talk
movie,
about it.
and there's so much linear content in that movie that you can't think that it's an accident that it was kind of designed that way.
Yeah, and he did say that he was heavily inspired by that movie and a few others. I think Salem's Lot. Um,
One of my favorite books as a kid.
hmm There's a couple others that I mean, he obviously pulled inspiration and he did his research when it
Yeah.
comes to what needed to be. But you're right. I mean, that was when I first, because I've seen it twice, and I'm gonna go see it again. I might see it tomorrow, and I'm seeing it. Let me just shut up, because then I'm starting to think like, did they do something in the screen that like makes us go and see it more than once? Like it's kind of scary.
I agree. One of the things I picked up on, and it took me a minute, I think, to pick up on, and I don't know if it's just me or maybe you kind of got this too. A
hmm
couple of the only complaints that I heard from some of like my big horror movie fan friends,
hmm
they were like, "Man, I really would have loved to see more gore, like more kills."
hmm
And for me, I'm like, well, I don't really think that I would have, because I think the point was to avoid showing white on
Bunch
black
of black
carnage,
folks, yeah, getting devoured. We
getting murdered
know
by white
that.
people. Yeah, like that's
Yeah,
that's always been the case. You don't need to show it to know that it happened in a way that was brutal.
yeah,
So I
and
mean,
there
I think that that's kind of what I took away from that.
that's not, and I hadn't heard that much, but I did hear on some videos that like that I saw online, people reviewers, um sort of like qualifying like how much of a horror film is this actually, because it does feel like it's more than one genre. If it's
Yeah, oh
obviously
yeah, for sure.
I think it's has enough gore in it to be a horror film. Like it's a scary
Yeah,
motherfucking movie. But it's also a thriller, so it's a horror thriller. But then it's obviously, I just think it's so much more.
yeah.
And
Even the music was so well done. Rocky Road to Dublin, I think that
uh,
they absolutely nailed that. The whole blues jazz crossover to 90s hip hop, like I think that that was. And then at the end, is it Buddy Guy that plays?
Buddy Guy,
And I mean, I grew up on that, and like to see him at the end, like that's so crazy.
it's
They really
wild.
like pulled. really strong influences and put them in there.
They sure did. And for those of you who haven't seen it, if you do, and if you're still here because of the spoilers, you should definitely just sit through, like, wait until the lights come on in the theater at the end of the movie. Just stay because there's some post
After
credits and mid
credits,
credit
yeah.
scenes. Yeah. Uh, and I have to say that that scene in the juke joint that you mentioned, like Sammy or Preacher Boy's sort of big moment was unlike anything I've ever seen,
Oh yeah.
um, in film, and I think it was just beautiful the way that they tied in all of these ancestors, and I did a deep dive on the dancers and who they represented in the movie,
Okay.
in that scene, and it's too much for me to say here, but, like, each one of those people on the screen is an historical being that actually
Yeah.
existed. And I think they could have just been like, "Oh, get these black people in some old time clothes and stand around and then you're the people in the club."
Yeah.
But the all the dancers and the people that um were like
Very meticulously
ancestors.
curated.
Yeah. It was very curated, uh beautifully curated. And the Rocky Road to Dublin, I talked to my ex is Irish and like straight up like lives in Ireland.
Yeah.
And we talked about he was like, this movie is like as little as little as much as the representation of is it's less about Irish people, even though it's very deliberate. It's not like half the movies takes place in
Yeah.
Ireland. Um, but what of the movie is Irish
Very
is
authentic.
so authentic and specific
Yep.
that the Irish people that I talked to and also my ex man, we're like we're still friends.
Yeah.
Um, was like this was so accurate, like even more accurate than like some other like Irish on-screen American Irish representation.
Yeah.
And I think that Ryan did a great job.
Yeah. I mean, it just, there's so much. You and I kind of talked previously about like how much of, like, I really love hoodoo and hoodoo culture and its tie-ins to New
Mhm.
Orleans and the Southern Delta area. And um, I read somebody's theory that the jazz musician was like akin to Papa Legba. And
Ah, there you have it.
the tie-ins with the Mojo bag, or like I said, I wish they would have kind of elaborated on like her rolling the bones and what significance that had.
I did not. Yes, 100%. And I'm so glad that the depiction of hoodoo, which I think was really well done and super tasteful, because I think for a lot of people it was a bit of an introduction to hoodoo versus voodoo.
Voodoo, yeah,
I think we people just assume that that's all it exists.
they're the same thing.
Uh, yeah, and that they're the same thing. The I think it was so well done, and I love how it was sort of on par with the there was sort of lots of different religions at play in this movie. There
Yeah,
was obviously Christianity with the preachers, with the father who was the preacher, and then preacher boy, like the son, and the praying at the end, and then what Remick the vampire says about the Lord's Prayer. Obviously hoodoo, and also like sort of vampirism is kind of a religion, maybe it could
yeah.
be.
Well, I mean, and
Um,
it's so kind of referred over to as satanic, which, not necessarily like a true thing, but because it's so associated with the devil, like vampirism, there is that like giving up your soul, sort of those continuous themes of, hell and the afterlife, and,
mhm.
you know, resigning your soul to walk the earth forever, sort of thing.
What do you think about Christianity in this, not in general, but in
Oh,
this
God.
film?
I was like, oh, God.
What do you think about Christianity? Hmm.
Um,
But but in this film, like,
I
talk
don't think
to me
it's
about it.
painted as. I think it is also painted as a villain.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Mm-hmm.
if anything, hoodoo is the only religion in this movie that kind of is given any light to it as like a
I
protective
love
force.
that.
Yeah, me too. I think that it was absolutely very designed to be that way. But I mean, you look at, Preacher Boy's struggles with his father and then
Mhm.
struggles with the whole vampire thing, and he still chooses to go back to music. And I think the overall message is kind of like religion isn't, it doesn't have the answers, and
Well, that's
it's
the fourth
controlling,
religion.
it's control.
It's it well, that's what it's designed for, right?
Yep.
And I think we can certainly see that because that's what the father, who's a preacher, was clearly, doing, telling him, instructing him, put down that music. It's the devil's music. It's gonna do. Um, and that's you just named, I think, the fourth religion. The fourth religion in this movie is definitely music, is
Yeah.
blues. Or music in general, because even with the Irish folks, like their
Yeah,
culture is
it's
represented.
it's
Yeah.
the biggest form of spirituality, I think, in that movie. And I mean, in
100%.
my own personal life, I would think like music is spiritual. Music is a religious experience.
Experience. It
Yeah.
is. It is. And it most certainly, obviously we have a good time. We dance, we party with listening to music, but like of course the music in the film summons ancestors and has the power to connect people to their past. Like that's literally what it's supposed to do
Yeah.
in addition to entertaining, to tell the record and keep the record of what's happening. Because if art reflects, if we're listening to, listen, if we're listening to music that was created in a very organic way, it should be reflecting what's happening in the lives of whoever's creating the music. Or it could just be like some, electronic moment that just like doesn't really have anything to say about it. It could have been recorded at any time, which is fine because I'm not down in electronic artists. I'm just saying like the folk music piece, and it doesn't have to be like just like the mamas and the papas, but like music. I think folk music is music that's written about a time that's like borderline on um, religious and political.
Yeah.
Uh, I think
Not
it's
my favorite reference,
essential.
but Bob Dylan.
Yeah, yeah, huh? But yeah, very much. Like his music was not like come to the club, we're gonna shake our ass, you
Yeah,
know?
it was very, very political, very, I'm sure that there's people that spiritually identified with that. I don't love
Yeah,
his sound, but again, like I think that for the folk genre, he was a prime example of that kind of.
100%. Talkie talk something walkers, talkie walkers. I can't see it far away. Um yes, I am gonna do a video if I can get around to it. I mean, I hope that like come next week, I'm not still the only person talking about sinners. Um, if I am, I might not do. I might be like, I'll read the room. But if it feels like there's still a vibe going on about sinners, then I will do a deep dive on the dancers. I found some great content from another great creator. I can't remember her name, and so I'll, of course will credit her. But I'm going to try to talk about like the whole thing. Maybe I'll invite Levi to talk with that about it. With that, I'll share the content with you first, and then we can like even go
Sounds
deeper.
great.
Um,
Let's talk about how hot everybody is in that movie for
the sex in the
no
movie
goddamn reason at all. I mean, Michael B. Jordan, I'm
and two
so
of
gay.
him.
I'm so
Okay,
gay for. Yeah, I'm so gay for that. Also Haley
you need to
Steinfeld
see
looks great. Just
gorgeous, super
the
sexy
the sex scene in
with
the
in
the
the
little,
room
yeah,
with Perline,
yeah.
and she's about to play. Oh, let me
She's
figure out how.
wonderful. She absolutely crushed
She
that
nails
part.
that.
Yeah.
Who plays Perline in Sinners? Jamie Lawton, that's her name. Jamie Lawton. And she's about to, Jamie Lawton, let's go to her IMDb. She's about to star. I was like, oh my gosh, this lady's about to blow up. Oh, she's about to be, guess who she's about to be? Okay, this is like full circle. Ryan Coogler, Fruitvale Station all day long. But
Okay.
his first
Great
like
movie.
breakout that everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, who is this?" was of course Black Panther, which is a Marvel hit, Marvel film, and it was a hit. It was a bona fide hit.
Yeah.
Um, and so now Ryan Coogler, the man, makes many movies and then Sinners, and it's competing this week or last week or whatever, whenever you're watching this, with Marvel's Thunderbolts. So
Thunderbolts,
it's like Ryan Coogler
which
against.
I also saw.
Did you have the same reaction to Thunderbolts as you did to Sinners?
No, absolutely not. But I didn't see the again. Thunderbolts is like a. It was done by a lot of directors from A24, so I thought I love A24's stuff.
I'm
So
not going to bash A24.
I went and watched it solely to see if the direction had changed a little bit, which it
Okay,
had. It was pretty dark, which I like.
I like
Um,
that.
I I have a lot of unpopular opinions about Marvel movies. I liked Doctor Strange, the last one that he did that Sam Raimi directed, just because I liked Army of Darkness so much. And it was very
Yeah,
like campy and kind of like the CGI was bad in like a really good way for me. But no, I listen, I thought Thunderbolts was one of the better Marvel movies I've seen in the last few years. I just
that's fair and
really
that's good.
I like Florence Pugh. Other than that, it kind of left me. The ending was kind of like, well, I saw this kind of come in. It wasn't. It wasn't great. It was good enough, but what that reviewer said or what the that headline said about Thunderbolts and
About
Sinners was
Oh
absolutely
my god,
bullshit.
that burnt my britches. That
Yeah,
burned my britches. I'm like, really? Thunderbolts rains on Sinners Parade or something like that,
so
and that
unnecessary.
it's unnecessary. Come on. I mean, it's always a competition and I get it, but like what dog do you have in the race? Variety or whatever
Who owns it?
whatever. Yeah, hello.
You know,
Uh
who's the billionaire that owns it?
Exactly, but so Marvel against Sinners in the box office, and now Jamie Lawton is going to be starring as the new Storm.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah, which is awesome. So like Marvel and
They're bringing back
Ryan
X-Men,
Coogler,
huh?
apparently they are, because that was like the one of the, besides Black Panther, that was like, when they were really, I mean, you know Avengers-ish, Avengers Endgame for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. I mean, I they should have let it die after Endgame. If
They
I'm gonna
should
be,
have. I was like, "Oh, yeah, they should
yeah,
have took a break."
it was pretty. It's been pretty brutal as somebody who really enjoyed comic book movies to like see what has become of that universe now. But
Mhm.
you know, it media. I guess I got to take most media at face value anymore. Everything has kind of become so backseat because of the way the world is, which kind of leading us back to our you need to get a license for a gun in New York and you need to learn how to shoot one.
I'm going to do it, and so I'm gonna come out yeah, I'm grateful that you inspired me to do it, because I don't know that I would have had the thought. I mean, I eventually would have had the thought. I've had the fleeting thought, but
Yeah,
like it didn't seem attainable, and I'd much rather, c- you know, just like in community, I'd rather do it with somebody in my community that I feel close to, that I feel safe with, rather than like me going down to the like truck thing,
the
whatever by
the
myself.
gun the local MAGA gun range.
Yeah, like, oh my God, I like there might be like, here's one. No.
Well, and it's funny because we I buy a lot of my firearms because all of the firearm companies that are owned here in my town are very conservative. I try not to give them money. So I
Mm,
buy
mm.
my guns from like secondhand online stores or from people that I meet like through the community that are like, oh, so and so has this weapon for sale. But the thing is then you have to get a transfer for it. So like
Oh, the license, just like a car.
the ATF has to be made aware that that gun is transferring possession. So I have to go into a gun store to pick it up. It has to ship to a gun store for me to be able to pick it up. So every time I go in there, I make sure I wear something either extremely gay or extremely liberal. So, I'm doing what I can to let these people know that there's plenty of us out here
Oh, that we're
that
buying the
are
guns.
gun owners. And I had a good conversation with one of the guys at a local firearm store a couple weeks back, and he was like, "Yeah, my uptick on liberal gun owners, I mean, they're keeping me in business right now." He said that
It is wild.
for every one conservative person buying a gun in his store, there's probably 10 to 15 liberal customers a
Really?
week. Yeah.
I mean, I've heard about it, and I did read that story. There was like a couple, that came out, recently. Like there's been a couple of those headlines, but I had no idea, and I don't think I know. There, I guess there's a couple of people that I know that were like, "Oh yeah, I have a gun," but even here in New York. But like besides that, I just haven't heard people talking about it. But I guess the other folks, the conservative folks that are there, already probably already have a gun if they're
Yeah.
gonna get one. Um, but I love that. So you're gonna have to
Well,
go in and like disguise like different disguises every time so they think it's I mean that might seem kind of shady.
oh, I'm not trying to
Uh
be disguised at
yeah,
all.
don't
If
do
they
that.
got a problem with me, they can tell me about it. Um,
I love it.
what I will say, and I think I told you about this, is I went shooting a week ago or 2 weeks ago
Mhm.
with a group of people that a friend of mine knows, and there was two different trans girls that were there.
Learning to were they
No, they
good?
weren't learning to shoot. They were shooting, and let me tell you, they were in full tactical gear. Um, were way more proficient with their weapons than any one of us were, and
What the heck?
watching them shoot was like watching a well-oiled machine work. It was incredible how proficient they were, not just at weapons handling, but just tactical thought in general. And I think that that is so important.
It's
Just
beautiful
yeah,
because we've
it's
been for some reason we look we can do like women can do the same thing men can do like we're a human and we can all do the same things so it's like somehow it ended up in my brain that like cowboys and Trump supporters are the only people who like naturally are good with guns and that's just not true
it
you
isn't. I
know
mean, it's a reflex, agility, patience. I mean, all things that generally women are better at than men. um, it firing firearms. Some of the even like the tactical drilling and stuff. Some of the best people are some of the smallest people I've ever met. I mean, there's some guys out there
mm,
that are 5'2", 5'3" that I wouldn't fuck with on my best day. And
mm,
it's
mhm.
learn. It's just like anything else, it's practice. You do 100 repetitions of something, you get okay at it. You do 1,000 repetitions of it, you're pretty good at it. You do 100,000 repetitions, you're a master. So it's just learning, at its
Mhm.
core.
Arm
But
yourselves, folks. Arm yourselves. Do you what
safely,
real quickly, safely, and responsibly, quickly, with like what in the headlines pissed you off? Anything this week?
fuck, dude. Where do I begin? We'll touch on the new one. Newark mayor getting arrested
Oh my
yesterday.
gosh, Baraka, I think his last name is Ras
Yeah,
Baraka. Yeah, wild. And I'm happy to see that potentially my future mayor of New York City, Zoran Mondani, was out
great.
there.
I love
Oh,
that man.
he is wonderful.
I want to move to
And
New
when
York just so I could vote for him.
honestly, please, because Cuomo has like a very good chance of winning. And I'm like,
I hope
no,
not, man. That guy is out there talking his shit and defending
he
people
is.
and doing the right stuff, and you just don't see enough of that in politics. I follow a couple of people on TikTok I really like. There's a young girl down in Arizona that just turned 25 that's running for Senate or Congress, and
Mm,
her name's Fox. I'm not sure what her first. Maybe it's
mhm,
Veronica Fox, but
mhm.
there's this new generation coming out that's willing to get arrested and cause trouble and, say the right things and follow it up with some action. And I think that that's what we need, because right now the Democratic Party is so fucked. And if they don't do something drastic to turn it around, we're going to be shitting the bed in midterms too. I don't know if I
It's
can cuss
not
on here,
business
so
as
I'm
usual.
sorry.
Yes, you can. Fuck it, suck a duck.
Okay.
But it's not business as usual, folks. It's just not going to be business as usual. And so especially given that like like today the real ID kicked in for everybody, and I watched a story. I actually shared a story.
Were you able to get
Uh,
yours?
Not yet, so we'll talk about it. Ugh.
Okay.
But I do have my passport, so like
Okay.
I can do what I need to do.
Oh,
Uh, but and I had a real ID. So actually, once you have it and it's attached to your like account or whatever profile, then it's I lost my physical license, but like it's a real ID. But anyway, there's a lot of people who can't get one. A lot of indigenous communities here, like First Nations in this country, uh, Indians, who are like either grew up on a reservation, things like that. They're their own sovereign nation within the borders of this country, and are not subject to the same rules or laws necessarily as like someone in outside in the United States of America. Um, and so they aren't necessarily required to have like a typical birth certificate. And then there's a lot of people who were elderly Black folks who were
Florida. I
born
saw a case about this
yeah.
today in Florida.
hmm They weren't giving
What
out birth
what did
certificates.
it
I mean,
what
Black
did they
people were not
do?
even considered humans up
Yeah.
until a certain point. So
She
like
said,
we
we
were
didn't go
not
to a
getting birth
hospital. Why would I
certificates.
have a birth certificate?
Exactly. Yeah. And so this is about disenfranchising people. The Save Act, which was a proposal that did not pass, they were going to vote on it
Thank
last
God.
week. And thank God. But it would have disenfranchised not only those two groups of people, but like trans people, anyone who's ever changed their name, which is trans
Women,
people,
married women.
married women, whoever is. Uh, uh, to stop them sorry let me finish it. To stop them from voting, like this would basically say if you've ever changed your name and it doesn't match your original birth certificate, then you're gonna have a hard time voting. Y'all, that's a lot of people. Even
Yeah.
a bunch of regardless of what party you're with, like nobody wants that. And so that's fucked up. That's scary. That's my point in the headlines. Oh my god.
So yeah, that's my headline for the week. I mean, anything ice related is just absolute horseshit to me right now. And if anyone ever tried to approach me or somebody that I was witnessing that, like a unmarked personnel try and abduct a human being, I would fight them. I mean, that's bottom line is that fact that that's happening in America is
They
so Gestapo-esque.
That's one of the things I wanted to say before we go is that like doing transparent, I got a chance to learn more about the pre-war Germany, post-war Germany. Um and I didn't know about the brown shirts who were, his militia, paramilitary, like
Yep.
people that were just like had a gun and were willing to go like act as basically a security to people in the with the Nazi party, who was really not a popular party at first, kind of akin to the same way that people were talking about Donald Trump on his first presidency, like, oh, nobody takes him seriously. He ain't going to win. And then suddenly he did. It was kind of like that, as far as I know, with Hitler and the Nazi party coming into power. And so they had armed security that was, taking, it's armed security for the elected officials and things. And it was the brown shirts.
Yeah.
And that is what like these ICE agents
Unmarked
are
ICE
not police
agents.
officers.
Yeah. Well, and
They're
I think
not police
what's
officers.
what's a scarier thought is I think that this is going to start spilling over, and you're going to start seeing more civilians out in the streets trying to play Gestapo and abducting people that they don't think are legal or turning them over. And
Mm-hmm.
that's, I think, where like the importance of local community and building a network of people is going to come into play.
You're 100% right, and apparently that's what's happening because they just deputized. Apparently, I don't know. I don't have the fact on this, but I heard that they have, and if they haven't, they're definitely going
They're
to
working on it.
deputize just regular civilians to be a part of ICE. Like, even if I don't know what the qualifications are. I don't think they're very high, in the first place. But like, they're kind of like being like, hey, did you vote for Donald Trump? Here's your badge, go get them, because it feels like ICE is like the sort of like the grievance patrol of MAGA.
Yeah,
Like, I don't want immigrants, so I'm going to do something about it. Like, that's what
exactly.
it feels like. I'm not trying to paint all people who are Trump voters with the same brush.
I think that there's
Uh,
a heavy difference between people that openly call themselves MAGA and people that voted for Trump because they identified with some kind of message that he gave them that he was going to fix the economy. I still try
yeah.
and keep space in my life to hope that those people can self-educate and turn it around because like you and I have talked about, I think eventually we're going to need as many people that have seen and realized that this is bad as possible to unite
Mhm.
together, which doesn't disclude ex-Trump voters. But I think that the people that are staunchly MAGA will live and die by it. And 50 years from now,
Mhm.
they're still going to be going to their closet to look at their red hats and fondly remember the time that they thought they were important.
Oh, you better read them. Read them. Listen, I love you. I think you're fantastic. You are absolutely amazing. I'm gonna put Levi's social so you can keep your eyes peeled for Levi. You'll definitely be seeing him again on a stream. And y'all, I'm gonna make sure that we get some video game moments happening. Uh, you all, thanks everybody for tuning in to this stream. And Levi, thank you for this chat. I love talking to you about all these things. So we
I love
definitely
talking
should
to
do
you
it
too.
again. Yeah.
And we'll
Anyway,
see you. We're going to see you in New York sooner than later.
oh yes, you will.
We'll
So
talk
I'll
about
text
that
you
this week.
offline about that. Awesome. All right. Thanks, baby.
All right. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Can I end the show? Yes, I can. Bye, y'all.